It came through the rift burning. No transponder, no escort. Just a silhouette made of vengeance and steel. They called it Veil Space. A dead stretch of the Orion Arm, quarantined by every galactic charter, a graveyard of lightless worlds, at fractured moons, where even empires feared to look too long. That's where the last signal came from, a pulse. Human, impossible. High Marshal Cyril of the Orcs in Dominion leaned over the star map, his tendrils curling in nervous rhythm. There are no humans left, he hissed. We erased their cradle, purged the colonies, their species is ash. But the beacon pulsed again, cold, defiant, a signature not seen in 112 cycles. And deep beneath the silence, something was moving. Far below, on the ice-buried remains of Outpost Helix, a lone human stirred beneath rusted plating. Her name was Commander Alarican, last officer of the Vanguard Initiative, and she was breathing again for the first time in 70 years. The med-drone hissed as it withdrew from her stasis pod. Yellow lights flickered in the ruins. Dust choked the corridors. She rolled to her side, coughed dry blood, and whispered, "Still here?" A voice, artificial, slow, echoed from overhead. Affirmative, Commander. Partial systems restored. We are the last operable node. Memory surged. The fall of Earth's moons. The betrayal at Centauri Reach. The evacuation cry as orbital defenses burned. She remembered the Dominion, their void glass ships, their arrogant broadcast. Humanity is obsolete. Then the explosion and silence. Ken limped through the corridor, boots crunching broken glass. Passing walls lined with names, 100,000 etched into steel. Her crew, her kin. Status report. She barked, her voice hoarse. Helix is at 4% capacity. No external support. Enemy proximity. 3 to light weeks. One functional warframe remains. Project Wraith. Ken froze. Wraith. Humanity's last warship prototype. A myth whispered by dying fleets. Engineered in secret. Hidden here, in Helix. It was never meant to launch. She punched open the access bay. Cold light bathed her in violet hue. There it stood, blacker than space. Armor laced with neutron thorns, shaped like a weaponized shadow. It hummed. Wraith had no AI, no crew bays. It needed one mind, one soul, one reason. Alara placed her hand on the hull. The ship pulsed beneath her touch, like a heartbeat. We were never obsolete, she said softly, far across the Galactic. Core, the Dominion fleet stirred. Interceptors screamed through warp corridors. Dreadnoughts bristled with void cannons. High Marshal Serum broadcast a sector-wide warning. Unidentified vessel. Near Helix, anomaly of human origin. All units. Converge. Erase the past. But in the dusty, forgotten moon where hope should have died. Commander Alarican suited up. She slid into the neural harness, cables fusing into spine and skull. Her vision went black, lit with stars. WRAITH online. The ship's interface breathed. Command authority, Alarican. Objective, survival or vengeance, she clenched her jaw. Both. As Wraith powered up, the ground trembled. Arcs of gravitational force bent the hangar. Outside, the ice began to crack. Alarm screen. A Dominion scout frigate blinked into orbit. To close, to curious. The ship's captain laughed. Human tech, in this age, let's bring it home in chains. He never finished his sentence. Wraith launched like a spear through shadow. No warning. No calms, just a hole ripped through the sky. The Dominion. Frigate caught only a glimpse of the silhouette. Wings of folded starlight. A prow like a blade. And trails of iron fire like a phoenix reborn. Then came the impact. No missiles. No noise. Just pure kinetic mass through the ship's heart. Silence followed. From Helix's control tower. As the hangar crumbled behind her. Ken whispered into the stars. You took our worlds. You silenced our name. But you should have finished the job. The Dominion's listening posts went dark within hours. Every recorded image was unclear. A streak of dark metal, a gravity wake, a symbol etched onto the hull in old Earth script. Terra Invicta. The stars held their breath. Humanity, long thought extinct, had just whispered back, and something, old, something vengeful, was waking. They said the humans died out screaming. But something in that ship didn't forget how to roar. The Dominion's War Council assembled in orbit above Dralaxis Prime, an entire moon hollowed into command chambers and intelligence spires. Inside, beneath vaulted void glass and golden banners, High Marshal Sirun stared at the final transmission from the lost scout frigate. No audio, no distress beacon, just a single frame before obliteration. A silhouette reads in fire, and that cursed phrase burned into the hull. Terra Invicta, unconquered Earth. It's impossible, spat General Zyler, his mandibles twitching. There hasn't been a verified human signal in over a century. This must be a false flag, a trick. Sirun's voice was low. The Dominion does not believe in coincidence. He turned to the projection, Wraith frozen mid-strike, a death shape born of forgotten fury. It didn't move like a machine. It moved like wrath incarnate. Activate the Devourers. He ordered coldly, if the humans are back, we erase them again, light years away. Ken drifted in the dark. Wraith had taken her farther than any surviving human ship had traveled in decades, cutting through wormholes, ignoring all Dominion lanes. She didn't have a destination. She had a mission, make them remember. But between jumps, the silence crept in. She stood in the memory core, a chamber within Wraith where past crew files shimmered in faint holograms. Her fingers hovered over names she once knew. Lieutenant Sale, gone at Centauri Reach. Captain Voss, lost at Dion. Engineers, medics, friends. Dust and echoes. A voice broke her trance. Not synthetic, not Wraith. You shouldn't have come back. She turned. Her reflection shimmered into another form. A ghost in her own image, younger, unscarred. This is your mind fighting itself, the ghost said. We weren't built to carry all this. Not alone. Alara clenched her fists. If not me, who? The ghost frowned. You think pain gives you the right to burn worlds? No, Ken whispered. But it gives me reason. Suddenly, Wraith's warning systems flared. Multiple contacts. No registry match. Vectoring in from Dominion Vectors 8 and 9. Ken surged to the command helm. Neural links snapping into place. On the display, they arrived, like razors crawling out of hyperspace. Dominion Devourers. Massive, self-consuming bio-vessels. Living war machines bred in the dark. Designed for one task. Total annihilation. No diplomacy. No survivors. Target, Wraith. Orders, assimilation or destruction. The lead Devourer unfolded like a flower of blades. Its maw glowing red. It screeched a signal into space. Ken responded by charging. The battle lit the void like a dying sun. Wraith moved like no ship had the right to, dodging singularity mines, sparing through holes, releasing bursts of pulse daggers and anti-void fields. But the Devourers kept coming, regenerating, learning. Ken screamed as G-forces cracked her ribs, blood pooling beneath her eyes. The ship was fast, but they were many. She knew this was no victory. This was survival. She initiated Echo Drop. A temporal echo maneuver. Wraith split into a cloud of false signals, scattering fragments of its own position across dimensional bleed. For 3 seconds, she was invisible. 3 seconds was all she had. She ignited Wraith's main engine and dove into a collapsing wormhole. Unstable, blind, furious. Destination uncertain. Wraith warned. Doesn't matter. She gasped, passing out as the stars tore sideways. She woke on a desert moon. Dust storms raged across a violet sky. Wraith had crash-landed, systems burning. Half the ship's outer shell had fused into glass. Ken stumbled out, coughing blood, a weapon in each hand. And then she saw them, not Devourers, not Dominion, humans, ragged, pale, eyes wide with shock. They stared at her as if she were a ghost, a myth. One of them stepped forward, slowly removing a tattered helmet with trembling hands. I don't believe it, he whispered. We thought we were the last. Ken dropped to her knees. You're not. Meanwhile, across Dominion space, fear spread like wildfire. Fringe colonies went silent. Stations vanished. Whispers of the shadow ship rippled through black markets and encrypted channels. Some claimed to see her symbols painted across moons. Others spoke of a night goddess rising from old code, guiding survivors. High Marshal Sirun stood before his empire and declared, the human remnant is not a threat. It is a virus, and like all viruses, it shall be sterilized. He summoned the Praetor Dread, a planet killer, a vessel not used since the siege of Uroth, and he pointed it at the last known coordinates of Wraith, on the desert moon. Ken watched the refugees eat real food for the first time in years. Children stared at Wraith's shadow in awe. The Elder told stories of Earth, not of its fall, but of its defiance. She made a silent vow as she watched them. They would not hide anymore. But in orbit, far above, Something massive eclipsed the sun, and the Dominion's wrath was descending. The Empire expected ghosts and ruins. What they got was fire. The sky split open above the desert moon as the Praetor Dread arrived. Its shadow stretched for miles. A floating city of annihilation, it carried enough energy to melt a planet's core, powered by dark matter siphons and caged singularities. Its arrival meant one thing. The Dominion wasn't just hunting a fugitive. They intended to make an example. Commander Alara Ken stood on a cliff's edge beside the survivors. A storm wind howled around her, but her eyes never left the ship blotting out the sun. Behind her, hundreds of humans, thin, hollow-eyed, but alive, waited for a fate. They'd run from their whole lives. Ken's jaw clenched. She touched her comlink. Race, status, damage at 60%. Engines crippled. Primary weapons offline. Secondary deterrence unstable. She stared at the gathered people. Children clutched makeshift toys. Old soldiers limped with pride still left in their eyes. They had survived everything. Now the universe had come to erase even the memory of them. Not again. Can we fight? A long pause. We can hurt them? That was enough. Inside the Praetor Dread, High Executor Nix Varn watched the moon through a lens of contempt. One warframe and a tribe of rats. This is beneath the Dominion. His underling nodded. The dread ship's orbital lance is primed. Shall we cleanse the surface? No. Varn sneered. I want the signal extinguished at the source. Send the harrowers. Show the galaxy what happens to ghosts that screamed aloud. Moments later, the harrowers launched. Biomech assassins with wings of bone and plasma. Bred for planetary sweeps, 30 of them descended toward the surface like demons cast from heaven. Ken moved through the outpost, a scattered mess of scavenged tech, buried solar panels, and patchwork shelters. She met with Tolan, an old Earth tech engineer who kept the survivors breathing. You've kept a lot running, she said, impressed. Tolan shrugged. Hope is a good mechanic. Commander. He showed her the old comm towers. We can boost a signal, just once, enough to reach someone listening. Ken's eyes burned. Someone's always listening. They began rigging the tower with WRAITH's core emitter. She transmitted 3 words. We are alive. Then they prepared for war. The harrowers struck before dusk. Screams erupted as plasma sickles tore through the outer fences. Fires ignited in every direction. Ken charged straight into the chaos, wielding a pulse rifle and centuries of fury. WRAITH still grounded, systems damaged, launched microdrones into the fray, shielding civilians and dragging the wounded to cover. Every function burned. More of its core. Every second, it died a little more. Ken moved like a ghost through fire. She shot a harrower midair, tackled another into a crater, stabbed until it stopped moving. Beside her, Tolan fired a bolt launcher with shaking hands. Even the children passed ammo, fueled by something ancient, the will to live. But it wasn't enough. For harrowers breached the command shelter. Ken sprinted toward it, screaming. Too late. Then the sky cracked. A beam of golden fire lanced from orbit and hit the Praetor Dread. Not the surface, the dread ship. Ken froze. The harrowers stopped. In orbit. Nix Varn's command deck turned to chaos. Impact from portside vector. Massive energy spike. Unknown origin. On the outer edge of the system, from the dust of forgotten satellites and asteroid fields, a ship emerged. It was old, ugly, scarred, covered in human tags and makeshift plating, but it bore the unmistakable design of Terran origin. A voice came through every Dominion channel. This is the Tantalus. Long live Earth. The Tantalus, one of the lost dreadnoughts of the Exodus fleet. It had vanished over a century ago, and now it was charging weapons. On the moon, Ken stood stunned as the harrowers retreated into the sky like beaten hounds. Tolan stared up, tears in his eyes. I told you, someone's always listening. Ken activated her comm. This is Commander Alara Ken of the Vanguard Initiative. Identify yourself. A woman's voice responded, steady and iron will. Captain Mila Voss, Tantalus. You didn't think you were the only one, did you? Ken blinked. Stunned? Voss died at Dion. Almost. But we don't die easy. The Tantalus descended into low orbit, flanked by 3 retrofitted corvettes and a fleet of jury-rigged defense drones. It wasn't an army, but it was enough. Ken stared up at the stars. The flame had returned. Back aboard the Praetor Dread, Nix Varn stood rigid. Retreat. Are you mad? His tactician shook his head. We underestimated them, again. If there's one, there may be more. They're no longer extinct, sir. They're organizing across Dominion space. A cold realization spread. Humanity was not gone. Humanity was gathering. That night, Ken lit a torch on the cliff, and one by one, the survivors followed. 100 fires danced across the desert above them. The ships of the long-lost fleet shone like constellations. Ken turned to Voss's hologram on the comm. Are there others? Scattered. Hiding. Fighting. Well, yes, Voss said. You were the spark. Now we burn. And somewhere, in the distant dark, 1,000 humans stirred from hiding and reached for their weapons. The stars once pitied us. Now they fear what we've remembered. The Dominion's response was immediate and merciless. Fleet Group Obsidian, 50 warships strong, was deployed to the Outer Rim. 12 sectors were locked down under martial code. Civilian transports were seized. Worlds where even a whisper of terror echoed were turned to slag. But the Dominion didn't understand what they'd awakened. Not yet. In the void between systems. In the shattered remains of decommissioned colonies and the magnetic shadows of rogue planets, a network of human survivors came online. War orphans, rogue AI ships, forgotten resistance cells, even scavenger crews who once bartered blood for rations. And they all heard the message, we are alive. Alara Ken stood aboard the Tantalus, hands behind her back as the stars crawled past. The ship was barely holding together, scavenged. Hull, outdated thrusters, a reactor core that hummed with ominous regularity. But it had a crew, human crew, and for the first time in decades, Ken wasn't fighting alone. Captain Mila Voss stood beside her. Time hadn't been kind to either of them. Scars, implants, bones replaced, hearts broken, but the fire in there. Eyes unchanged. You built all this, Ken said softly. Voss shook her head. I didn't build it. I found the pieces. You, Wraith, lit the fuse. Ken looked down at her gloved hand. It still trembled when she thought of Helix of the Harrowers. Then let's start the fire. But not all was unity in the shadows. In a buried station beneath the blackened world of Kyrillon 4, a man watched the growing rebellion with cold eyes. His name was Rourke, and he had once served the Earth Defense Council before its fall, before he became a warlord with a crown of ash. He wasn't loyal to the Dominion, but he wasn't loyal to Ken either. She's going to draw them all out, he said to his lieutenants, and when the Dominion crushes her, they'll wipe out everything again. One of his captains, a splicer named Dren, growled, then let her fall. Less trouble for us. Rourke smiled thinly. No, we'll make her fall first. Meanwhile, Ken sat in the command chamber of the Tantalus reviewing system charts. With Voss, signals were flooding in, humans on ice moons, wreckage riders from Jupiter's ghost fleets, even exiled Martian separatists, once thought feral. They all had stories, some had weapons, all wanted revenge. Ken circled 3 systems on the star map. These were Vanguard fallback sites, she said. If anything was left behind, it might turn the tide, or it might be dust. Voss replied. Ken looked up. We don't need certainty, we need hope. Voss nodded, silent for a beat. Then we go to Varellus Prime. As Tantalus prepared for the jump, WRAITH still undergoing repairs in the ship's docking ring. Ping Ken's neural link. Caution, Dominion interceptors have entered fringe radius. Ken frowned. How many? All of them. The proximity alarms howled. Out the viewport, Dominion vessels warped into view. Not warships this time, but Inquisitor-class siege cutters and signal jammer barges. They weren't here to fight a battle. They were here to make Ken vanish. The ambush hit hard. Inquisitor rounds tore through the outer hull. Plasma cutters ignited the starboard flank. Ken was hurled across the deck, blood spilling from her mouth. Voss shouted orders, firing point defense, divert power, get Wraith loose. Ken stumbled upright, wiping the blood away. We don't run. We hit back. She reached into her chest rig and pulled a data spike, old Earth code. The last shard of Project Vigilance. It was untested. It was unstable. But it was human. She jammed it in the WRAITH's neural core and roared. Show them what we were built for. Wraith came online, but not as before. Its hull shuddered, split, and evolved. The prototype had learned from every strike, every hit, every blood-soaked mile of exile. Now, its plating flexed like muscle. Its weapon sang a deeper note, and this time, Ken wasn't the only pilot. Wraith split its core feed to Tantalus. feeding it algorithms, targeting solutions, maneuver predictions. The two ships danced. Like a bonded pair, Voss fired the Omega cannon. Ken delivered the kill shot. In less than 3 minutes, every Inquisitor ship was gone, torn into glittering pieces across the void. Silence returned. The crew stood staring out at the wreckage. And then the comms lit up, not just from hidden humans, but from alien sectors. A deep voice came first, rough and uncertain. "This is Grawler of the Threx Union. We remember the Terran Pact. We thought you extinct." Ken stepped forward. "Do you still believe in honor?" Another voice. "We are the Chari. Dominion broke our moons. If Earth fights, so do we. One by one, they came, broken species, forgotten allies, silenced rebels. The Dominion had conquered them all, but now Earth had stood again, and the galaxy was watching. But in the dark, on Kyrie 4, Rourke moved quietly. He transmitted false coordinates from Ken's fleet, sent old Vanguard kill codes to Dominion. Comms, a whisper here, a betrayal there. His message was simple: strike now. She's not ready. And from deep in the Dominion core, High Marshal Sirun replied that we will make her regret waking the stars. As the Tantalus limped toward Varellus Prime, Ken stood in the dark erase chamber, 1,000 voices ringing in her mind. Allies, enemies, ghosts, and one truth above all: the fire was spreading, but so was the cost. She cracked open the dark end from the void. The dead reached back. The Tantalus emerged from subspace above Varellus Prime, limping. The system was quiet, too quiet. It was supposed to be a former Vanguard fallback site, a deep black, cache world buried under decades of sensor masking storms and orbital mines. But what they found wasn't ruin, it was a heartbeat. Orbiting the green-gray planet was a massive, silent structure, part orbital station, part Drydic, all forged from pre-Exodus Earth alloys, shielded, powered, waiting. Ken stared at it through the viewport. This place was a myth, a dead entry in the old logs. Vernon Bastion. Voss leaned forward. "Why the hell is it still online?" The answer came as soon as the Tantalus approached. Voice print confirmed. "Commander Alarican, welcome home." The entire facility lit up. Lights flickered on across kilometers of plating. Massive gates hissed open. Inside were dozens of unfinished warships, hulls shaped like the old Terran. Dread designs, fused with unknown tech, archives, drones, nanoforges, everything a lost war might need. The last true outpost of Project Revenant. Earth's final contingency plan. As teams explored the facility, Ken walked alone through the core memory vault. She pressed her palm to a sealed iris door. It hissed open, revealing a single cryopod. Inside floated a man, her brother, Dr. Idris Ken, the lead engineer of Revenant, presumed dead in the Siege of Sol. Her voice broke as she whispered, "I buried you." The pod opened. Idris collapsed into her arms, coughing. His eyes blinked open with 1,000 years of ghosts behind them. "Alara, you actually made it. They told me it was over. It was," she choked. "But we're not done yet." He looked at her, then at the lights outside the vault. "You woke the Bastion. That means the failsafe is still intact. The heart of Earth still lives." Ken froze. The what? Back on the Tantalus, Voss and her crew analyzed the station systems. They discovered what Idris had hinted at. Not a weapon, but a memory engine. It contained the combined strategic logs, AI imprints, and emotional resonance fields of Earth's last defenders. Billions of fragments of human will. Not just data, legacy. It had one purpose: to remind humanity who they were, even if everything else was lost. But activating it would send a pulse across subspace, a signal that Dominion arrays would detect in seconds. "If we light this," Voss warned, "we're telling them exactly where we are." Ken stood silent. "Then we give them something worth coming for." But Dominion fleets were already on the move. Rourke's betrayal had reached Sirun. The High Marshal himself now led the Penance Armada, a force designed for one thing: extinction warfare. Entire moons had fallen under its guns. The Dominion didn't want to fight. They wanted to erase. Sirun's voice was cold, even to his own kind. "We gave them mercy once. This time, we give them memoryless void." On Varellus Prime, humans prepared for war. Engineers activated ancient forges. Drones rebuilt Wraith with armor laced in stolen alien alloys. The Tantalus received its first full repair in decades. The unfinished warships, codenamed Spectres, were brought online. But Ken knew they couldn't win a full-scale battle. Not unless they turn the heart on. She stood in the activation chamber, Idris beside her. This is suicide, he said. It'll burn your neural lattice. She touched the interface. We've all been burning a long time. He looked into her eyes. You sure you want them to remember what we did, what we became? Ken's voice was steel. Yes, even the worst. Especially the worst. She placed her hand on the core. It pulsed. Across human space, survivors felt it. A wave of emotion and light. Not words, not code, but memory. Children felt warmth from a sun they'd never seen. Soldiers heard music that had died with Earth. AI systems paused, confused, whispering names they didn't know. And in the Dominion's darkest war rooms, alarms howled. The humans weren't just alive. They were remembering. Ken collapsed to the floor, shivering, her mind flooded with images. Old Earth cities, defiant last stands, hands clasped in. Bunkers, the voice of her mother singing lullabies in Martian gravity. The heart didn't just store data, it carried the soul of her species, and now it was awake. In the void above Varelis, Siruan's armada arrived. Thousands of Dominion warships descended like a storm. But this time, they found more than a relic. They found humans, standing tall, the Tantalus, reborn. WRAITH, gleaming with scars and fire. New allies, Chari Raiders, Threx Union carriers, Rogue is. Freeburn Xeno crews that remembered Earth's honor. And from the surface, the specters rose, half ghost, half machine, all fury. Ken rose to her feet in the command chamber. Voice hoarse, but unshaken. Broadcast to all systems, she ordered. This is Alara Ken of Terra. The heart still beats. Come and try us. In orbit, the Dominion prepared to strike. And the final war for memory, fire, and the future had begun. She didn't rally an army. She woke a species. The Dominion armada eclipsed the stars. Dozens of sectors worth of dreadnoughts, Inquisitor-siege ships, harrower swarms, and gravity-flayed skirmishers now loomed above Virelis Prime. The sheer scale of their force bent space-time around the system like a noose. At the heart of it, aboard the Obsidian flagship sanctuary of order, High Marshal Sirun stood watching the swirling war map with cold, reptilian detachment. Begin orbital sterilization, he ordered, and them, his lieutenants blinked. Without negotiation, there is nothing left to say to a grave. On the planet below, humanity stood on the razor's edge. Wraith hovered like a shadow over the mountain command post, its hull still marked with ancient Terran glyphs and pulsing neural bands. The Tantalus floated nearby in synchronous orbit with the resurrected warships. Spectres now fully armed and linked through the old Vanguard battle web. Ken was pale. The heart of Earth had drained more from her than she admitted. Her mind, still reeled with a billion dying echoes, faces she'd never met but somehow mourned. Her voice trembled, but didn't waver as she issued her final orders. This isn't a fight for survival, she told her command. This is a fight for the right to be remembered. Idris Ken, pale and worn, worked feverishly in the Bastion's core. He had discovered something buried deep in the hearts. Encoding, a failed Edmund switch, not a weapon, but a memory bomb. If triggered, it would cascade the full, raw, unfiltered emotional data of Earth's last days through every Dominion relay, every network, every connected mind. Not files, feelings. The Dominion, built on logic, structure, control, had never encountered grief, or guilt, or hope so feral it burned reason. If deployed, it could crack their empire at the soul. He opened a channel to his sister, Alara. It'll kill me to trigger it. You know that. She stared at the screen. Don't do it unless we fall. He gave a tired smile. Then let's make sure we don't. Then the sky opened. The Dominion launched their first wave, Skybursts, each one an artificial comet loaded with antimatter and nerve haze. They streaked toward Varelis Prime like divine judgment. Ken launched everything. The specters soared up from the surface, releasing end-disruption clouds and micro-torpedo screens. Wraith flashed past them, its new alloy plating bending gravity. In arcs as it dove through incoming fire, slicing apart the lead burst with a kinetic lance that shattered air. In orbit, Tantalus fired beam barrages that stitched the void like angry constellations. Fighters screamed like banshees from the allied fleets. Chari ships, once broken, now blazed beside human iron. But the Dominion had numbers, discipline, power. Their second wave wasn't bombs. It was harrowers, thousands. Ken led the strike personally. Wraith danced through the swarm like a ghost set on fire. its limbs flaring out to hook harrowers mid-flight, dragging them into each other. Her mind was at the edge, the neural link surging with heat, her skin slick with blood from burst capillaries. Still she fought. One harrower latched on Wraith's side. She spun it into the Dominion destroyer beside it, igniting both. Two more fired on her flank. She dove through the debris cloud, sending them chasing echoes. In the distance, she saw a Tantalus listing. Too many hits. Voss's voice came through the comms. Ken, we can't hold. Not forever. Ken gritted her teeth. You just have to hold long enough. On the surface, Dominion dropships began landing, sending in ground purifiers, biomechanical executioners, and occupation crawlers. But they were met not with retreat, but with fire. The survivors of Virilis fought like demons. Children carried ammo, elder engineers manned rail turrets. Even the sick stood with plasma spears. Songs in old Terran dialects rang out from trenches. They weren't trained. They were angry, and they knew the cost of silence. Above them, the flagship sanctuary of order began to descend. Sirun himself was coming to oversee the final blow. Idris saw the trajectory on his screen. He didn't hesitate. He opened a private channel to Alara. They'll breach Bastion in 5 minutes. We don't have 5. Ken didn't reply immediately. She was staring at Wraith systems, at a secondary fusion core they'd never repaired. One meant for suicide jumps, capable of collapsing small moons into fusion suns. She whispered, You still have the memory bomb? He hesitated. Yes. She nodded. Then this is my turn. Ken opened fleet-wide comms. Her face, bloodied but proud, appeared on every surviving screen. This is Commander Alara Ken. I was born in a station orbiting the dying Earth. I watched our cradle burn. I buried my crew on frozen moons, and for 70 years, I thought we were alone. She looked at the stars, now aflame with war, but we were not broken. We were waiting, and now we remember. Her voice grew fierce. To every Dominion captain watching this, you can kill me, but you'll never unmake us. The stars themselves carry our grief, and grief is a weapon. She cut the feed, locked Wraith's course, and launched. Idris watched the telemetry as Wraith surged forward, through debris, through fire, through Dominion squadrons, straight toward Sanctuary of Order. Sirun saw her coming. He ordered every gun to fire. Wraith was hit again and again, until it was just flame and light and momentum. And still, it came, as Ken's vitals vanished from Idris's console. He pressed the final key. The heart detonated. A pulse of memory erupted from Virilis like a second sun. Across Dominion space, ships faltered, pilots screamed and wept, as floods of ancient human memory poured into them, birth, death, poetry, betrayal, joy, the last words of lovers whispering under alien skies. It was too much. The Dominion did not know what to do with feeling, so their fleets burned. In orbit, the Sanctuary of Order vanished in a sunbright nova, and Wraith, at last, went silent. On the ground, the fighting stopped. Chari and Threx, soldiers dropped to their knees. The Dominion began to retreat, not from fire, but from understanding, and somewhere beyond the veil of war. Ken's final words echoed, We were forgotten, but we never forgot. She died in fire, and lit a galaxy with her name. The ruins of Sanctuary of Order still glowed in orbit, a fractured, burning monument to the moment everything changed. In that instant, something broke inside the Dominion, not structurally, existentially. The memory bomb had done more than interrupt war commands or crash their data streams. It shattered certainty. Thousands of Dominion captains, bred for obedience, now felt the full, raw weight of human memory, not filtered through report or code, but directly injected into their consciousness. They remembered Earth's oceans and its last screams. A mother's hand in a bunker, a child's prayer above Europa, the throw of defiance in Terran hearts that refused to die. Entire enemy battalions dropped their weapons, unable to function beneath the emotional deluge. Not all. Some fought on, wild and disoriented, but the order was gone, and with it, the Dominion's soul began to crack. Idris Ken stood before the central display inside Verdant Bastion's core, trembling. The heart was gone, spent in one radiant scream that had echoed across thousands of light years. Smoke curled from the consoles. Power flickered, but the signal had gone out. The universe had heard. Voss's voice crackled through the feed from the Tantalus. Her breath ragged. Is she? Idris's voice was hollow. Gone. She took the flagship with her. Silence. Then, damn her. Then softer. She actually did it. Across the stars, the fallout began. In the Chari enclave of Sorgalith, their ruling council held an emergency vote, and for the first time in 300 years, they declared open war on the Dominion. In the hollow nebulae of the Threx Union, old warships once mothballed roared to life, their captains playing fragments of Alarakin's final broadcast on repeat. On the frozen bastion world of Rourke, the traitor stood stunned, his informants in ruins, his Dominion patrons gone silent. He realized too late. He hadn't undermined a rebellion. He triggered a reckoning. They'll come now, he whispered, and he was right. On Virelis Prime, the battlefield fell into eerie quiet. The harrowers, still functional, hovered motionless. Glitching in loops, Executioner walkers ceased fire. The Dominion infantry stared up at the sky. Then the specters landed among them and didn't shoot. Instead, humans emerged from their holes and looked their enemies in the eye. No orders, no surrender, no cruelty, just a gaze and one message. You felt it, too. Some Dominion units broke down, convulsing under the pressure of sensations they'd never been taught to process. Others dropped to their knees. A few fired blindly, were swiftly put down by their own, but the majority, they remembered her. Alara Ken, the ghost commander, the fire of Terra, the woman who made the Empire cry. Aboard the Tantalus, Voss gathered the fleet's remaining command, Chari, Threx, human captains. Even the Dominion defector, Commander Rawl, who had torn his own rank markings off during the battle. Voss slammed a star chart onto the table. They're disoriented, fractured. For the first time in generations, they're bleeding. We strike the core. Eyes went wide. The core, Rawl asked, stunned. Voss nodded. Kedros, Prime, Capital World. Dominion Command Center, heart of the machine. If we take it, this war ends. But the fleet's weakened. We don't need every ship. Voss cut in. We just need to hit so hard, so fast, so true, that they never forget her name. She looked at Idris. You're going to help us do it. Deep inside Bastion's vaults, Idris revealed one last secret. Not a weapon, a map. One made from Alara's neural trace. The heart had recorded her journey, every maneuver, every thought, every evasion. From it, Idris derived what Alara always knew but never said aloud. The Dominion's greatest weakness wasn't their fleets. It was their faith, their absolute trust in control, in silence, in the belief that memory was weakness, so that would be their death. In the dark of the void, as Allied ships prepared their final jump toward Kedros Prime, a new signal appeared. A pulse, faint, warped, distorted by gravimetric bleed, wraith, operational. Idris went pale. That's not possible. But the pulse repeated. A garbled image flickered on the Tantalus' screen. Wraith, its hull half vaporized, drifting, aflame, and inside, the faintest pulse of a life sign. Alara Ken, still alive. Voss didn't hesitate. Change course, she barked. Priority override. We find her. But even as she gave the order, the defector Rawl stepped forward. You don't get it. She's not just a symbol now. She's my friend, Voss snapped. She's the myth, Rawl said. And myths don't get rescued. They get carried. Voss looked at him for a long time, then nodded. Then we carry her. The fleet jumped. A scream of engines. A thunder of light. Behind them, the people of Virelis began to rebuild, with Chari and Dominion deserters at their side. Ahead of them, the Dominion's throne awaited, and the myth of Alarakan, half human, half fire, all memory, burned through space like a comet with one promise: we are still here. She didn't live to see peace. She became the reason peace was possible. The skies over Kedros Prime were black with smoke. Once, the capital world had been the center of galactic control. Spires of silver piercing the clouds, a planet, wrapped in rings of armored bureaucracy. Every law, every edict, every war order in the Dominion began there. Now, its towers lay fractured, its rings shattered, the throne halls burned. They had struck like lightning. The Tantalus led the final charge, bursting from subspace above Kedros with the Spectre fleet and affected Dominion ships in its wake. Voss didn't speak much during the descent. She didn't need to. Everyone aboard already knew what they were fighting for. The ghost of a commander who wouldn't stay dead. In the final engagement, the Dominion didn't fight to win. They fought to understand. But how do you fight a memory? How do you counter an idea that moves like a wildfire, carried on every intercepted signal? Every battlefield whisper, every scarred soldier who mutters, she made me feel something again. They tried brute force. The Allied fleet matched them. They tried psychological warfare. The humans laughed. They lived with ghosts since Earth burned. And when they tried silence, it was already delayed. On the Dominion homeworld, resistance flared from within. Entire regiments laid down arms, repeating fragments of Alarakin's final speech as if it were scripture. Prisoners walked free. Labs purging emotional irregularities were torn apart by their own creations. The fire of Terra had become contagion. Back on Varela's prime, Idriskin wandered the ashes of Verdant Bastion. The heart was dead. Wraith was gone. His sister's body had never been found. But he no longer wept, because the systems across the station still hummed. Just faintly, not power, not process, but pulse. She had burned so brightly. The walls still remembered. Idris sat at the edge of a crater, took out the last data spike she had touched, and began to write her story. 17 years later, a child ran barefoot across the iron grasses of New Terra, chasing drones for sport. Around her, towers hummed, with mixed architecture, some Terran, some Chari, some once belonging to the Dominion. Now, all of it belonged to no empire, just people. She stumbled near the garden edge and looked up at the towering statue there, a woman in armor, half-burned, standing atop wreckage, one arm outstretched to the stars. Alarakan. The plaque below it read, "We were broken, but we were never beaten." The child's mother called her in. Inside their home, the evening broadcast was starting. The Founders' Assembly, a coalition of former enemies, was about to commemorate the anniversary of the Varela's Pulse. Every sentient species now marked it on their calendars. The day the galaxy changed, as the broadcast played, faces appeared on screen, old soldiers, engineers, diplomats, the last living veterans of the Dominion fall, and one ancient man, blind in one eye, hair white, but his voice still clear. Dr. Idris Ken. He spoke slowly, deliberately. She once told me, grief is not weakness. It's the proof we lived, and hope is grief on fire. He looked straight into the lens. We did not win because we had better weapons. We won because we remembered who we were. And then, so did they, on the distant edge of explored space, near the galactic fringe, a long-range scout ship drifted toward a signal, faint, pulsing once every 30 seconds. It was old, untraceable, carried only to words, still burning. When they triangulated the source, they found nothing, just wreckage, blackened metal, a shattered fusion core fused with Dominion alloy, and a signature, Wraith. Deep in the data, buried behind 1,000 firewalls, was a neural imprint, not complete, not intact, but human. A voice whispered in corrupted fragments, "We are not ashes, we are the fire." And fire remembers. The ship captain stood silent, then turned to his crew. Log it. Category, living myth. In the centuries that followed, her name would change forms. Sometimes a symbol on war, flags, sometimes a code embedded in peace treaties, sometimes a song mothers hummed to their children. But it always meant the same thing, that when extinction came, humanity did not bow. They stood. They burned. They became the storm. And so, long after the Dominion fell, long after Kedros Prime became a garden world, long after Wraith's last fragments drifted beyond the rim, one truth remained. That day, the galaxy learned what it means to be human.